I do.
Okay.
No, I don't. What's happening?
Well, good. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. This is another edition of Radical Sharing Freely Chosen. And my name is Scott, and with me, as always, on this Monday is Trina Paulus, author of Hope for the Flowers. This is the Monday after Easter Sunday, but that doesn't mean that the celebrations and the observances just kind of stop. They continue with a little bit more, and you've got a special topic about Mary Magdalene today, and a few other things, don't you, Trina?
Sure, I do. And Scott, traditionally, we have 8 days of Easter. Like we have 40 days of Lent, and then a Holy Week comes. And we've just been through all that. And in my parish with masses, we were all together, our English congregation, our Spanish congregation, our Creole congregation, and with some doses of language. So these 3 days from Holy Thursday to Good Friday to the 3-hour Easter Vigil Saturday night, and then Sunday, Easter Day, these are all community. Our whole community of different languages was there. So part of it I understood and part of it I didn't. And this is, again, the butterfly symbol of a parable about the resurrection that is very dear to my heart. As with anybody who knows Hope for the Flowers knows that that's one of the ways to think about it. It's a transformation story. So today I want to talk about Mary Magdalene, because tomorrow all day is the time we think about her role. She was called the apostle to the apostles. And it was only later, centuries later, that somebody made the mistake of mixing her up with the sinful woman who Jesus said her sins are forgiven her, leave her alone. When she came in, I mean, he was with the Pharisees and had supper, and they were scandalized that he let this woman wash his feet and also anoint them with expensive perfume. And the other Mary, the sister of Lazarus, did that too. So it's a little confusing. But Mary Magdalene was a woman of means and was one of the women who supported these apostles and Jesus all during her life. And she is really a disciple, the closest one, and she's the first one Jesus appeared to after the resurrection. So I have a number of art things related to Mary Magdalene, but I think I'll first read the gospel. And this is the gospel that was my mother's favorite that we used at her funeral. So I want to read this gospel that we'll have in our churches tomorrow. And it's a very tender one. It's from the Gospel of John. Mary Magdalene stayed outside the tomb, weeping. And as she wept, she bent over into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white sitting there, one at the head and one at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken my Lord, and I don't know where they laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus there, but did not know it as Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" She thought it was the gardener and said, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him, and I will take him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned around and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Stop holding on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell them, I am going to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary went and announced to his disciples, I have seen the Lord, and then reported what he had told her. So she's called the apostle to the apostles, and many churches and basilicas in Europe were named after her. And she's this great saint. Now, Trina has made a lot of different things about Mary Magdalene. I think I'll go into these unless I want to start. I'm going to start with the last one. This is my mother. This is what I made for my mother's mass after she died at the age of 104. And this is what she wanted on her tombstone, where she and my father are buried. You see, there's down at the bottom is the image of the risen Christ with Mary Magdalene. And I have that statue. I'll show you in a minute, the casting from that. And on the other side, you don't have the other side. The other side just says Paulus with an image from Hope for the Flowers of that butterfly. And that's my mother digging, and she took care of the grave while my father was lying there all these years. She was a widow for 40 years. And this is that's a second casting of the same one. I don't know how well you can see it. This has not had any of the highlights polished, but you can see it, and you can see the gesture is very much the same as the statue I have behind. This is a solid bronze, and you see how it's made like that, so it's hollow and it's still quite heavy. And the one behind you is my only welded statue that I made during my New York period at a welding shop in New York City. And that's a bronze with sheet metal welded together. And she's pretty heavy too, so I'm not going to move her around, but she's there lifting her arms to Jesus, maybe on the cross. She was there under the cross, like Mary, his mother, and another two women were there under the cross, and John, the one man who stayed around. And so she's been obviously a very important person in my life. Now, I'll show you the other two images I have right now. This is Jesus. This is the rising Christ coming from the tomb. And I took a spoon. The principle when you want to write up something in a bronze, you burnish it. I burnished the body. I think you can see where it glimmers a bit there as opposed to the background. So you can burnish, and I can burnish that Mary Magdalene you just saw too. And this is a teeny weeny little cross. And I burnished that today a little bit. So you can see the parts that I burnished raising with the spoon. You use a material that's harder than the bronze. And so this was a little cross. That is something we used in our art production program. People could have bought it many years ago. Right now, nope. We don't make these things anymore. There might be some things I still have in storage, but that's it. And the third thing that's my art that I want to show you. Now, this is a 2-foot relief that we had as part of our art production too. So we sold that, and it's been used in churches and in many places. So it's much bigger. It's a relief too, and it's about my hand span here in height. And in width. I only have one of those, and that's in storage right now. And I want to read this sort of climax poem that I've really loved. This is by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Its nature is compared to a Herculean fire. And I'm just a little piece of it. Enough, the resurrection. a heart's clarion, away grief's gasping, joyless days, dejection. In a flash, at a trumpet crash, I am all at once what Christ is, because he was what I am. And this Jack, joke, poor potsherd, patch, matchwood, immortal diamond, is immortal diamond. Well, that's what we're meant to believe ourselves to be, and we should be acting like it appropriately. That we too are called to witness love every place, with radical sharing, freely chosen. It's a theme that just resonates for me so much when I think of our political divisions, the world divisions, and the answer for it is radical sharing. But if it's forced radical sharing, like in a communist situation, you radically have to share, or in the capitalist situation where we radically have to share, except certain people on top have much more than they need and they don't seem to be sharing it equally, not equally. They like to be donors to things, but they control all that too. So it has to be freely chosen, which means a spiritual decision. And I like to think that my whole understanding of who I'm close to these days has shifted a great deal. I might have been called liberal at one point, but now I find I have more in common with people who are considered on the far right sometimes, and I find the far left. Some of those people are closer to me than the lethargic middle certainly is. So we don't need a lethargic middle that doesn't stand up for anything. We need people who choose radical sharing and freely give themselves to help it happen. So that's probably my basic message. Oh, and I have one more Eastery thing to show you right now. Here's life is changed, not taken away. This is from the Mass for the dead in the Catholic liturgy, but it also is the one line I used from anything like that in Hope of the Flowers. Plain to a yellow old caterpillar. What happens when she goes into her cocoon and comes out? Life is changed, not taken away. So that's my basic message for today, that about how important it is to share and to believe and to be transformed and to let yourself be transformed and to let yourself fly and carry that love of one flower to another. That's what it's about. The pollen in one flower is carried to another by butterflies who can fly. The flowers don't fly. They depend on the wind or the butterflies or the bees or sometimes birds or some other kind of pollinating insect. And so we badly need that. At least 1/4 of our food, 1/3 needs pollination. And in China, where they were used so many insecticides that they had, I saw a terribly important movie, The Taste of Honey, I think it's called, where they were actually selling pollen in little plastic bags, and people were climbing on ladders up to the trees, pollinating all the flowers with a paintbrush. So we have to protect our bees. We have to protect our earth while we still can. And that's sort of the message of Easter, that we love one another. And you'll see behind me still some of my peace posters. The Do Not Kill one from last week, and the No More Hiroshimas next to it. And the top of it, you see the bottom of the yin and the yang, which shows that all things work together, that things are not black and white, but it takes different kinds of people and different varieties to make a whole. So I think that's the message for today, the resurrection, the belief in the meaning of life, and the call to take action to make this world a more healing, better place. And let us pray for the people who are victims of war around the world right now. Amen. And thank you for watching.